don't know what I did to my microphone, but it has not been working. Last week I didn't have it plugged in, so that's on me. But this week I don't know what's going on. But deal with me as I try and handle things again and fumble everything. But today, if you will open up to Ecclesiastes chapter 7, we're going to work through half of this passage. And we're really close or just past halfway in Ecclesiastes. There are 12 chapters, if I remember right, because I know Zechariah I was in for a while, that had 14, and this one had 12, and I try not to get those two mixed up. But we're getting close to halfway, and we're on the downhill slope of this. We're going downhill, and in chapter 7, we're going to look at half of it today, and then maybe a little bit more next week, and maybe a little bit more the week after that, or maybe the next half. I haven't decided yet, so we'll come back next week, and you'll figure it out with me. So, Ecclesiastes chapter 7, while you're getting there, I want to tell you about what is common in many, many movies. There's different characters, different archetypes, different generalizations of characters that are in movies. And one of my favorite ones is the sage. It's the wise old gray guy who imparts wisdom on our main character, right? For Frodo Baggins in The Lord of the Rings, this is Gandalf the Grey. Or this is Dumbledore for the younger crowd out there. This is Yoda for 1977, or that was actually 1980-something Star Wars. And Obi-Wan Kenobi did the same thing. Or how about Mr. Miyagi with the chopsticks and the fly and the Karate Kid? There's all kinds of these throughout Scripture. I mean, in anybody like Rocky, what's the mentor Mickey, is that his name? That guy. And then how about Red from Shawshank Redemption? These are all the guys these old, wise, gray guys who take the main character under their wing and just teach him about life. And so what we're going to look at today, we're going to put ourselves in a story, our life story, as we're going from birth to death, as we're working across life. Solomon, he's going to be this old, wise, gray guy, this sage, who's going to take us under his wing and tell us about everything he's learned in life. Because up to this point, we've seen Solomon as a young guy, as an up-and-coming king, the guy who does everything, has everything, has tried it all, and now he's done that, he's had everything, and he's this old, gray guy. He's starting to hunch back a little bit. He says, hey, come over here and let me tell you a little bit about what's going on in life. And so, in case you're curious, he is the most qualified person to do this. I mean, we have people in our own lives who have played this part, but Solomon, he is the most qualified person. If you remember back, Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 12, he says, so I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly, for what can a man do that comes after the king? What he's saying is, I have done it all. Can anybody who comes after me, what can they do but what has already been done by me? And a measly copy of what I have done. He has done it all. Remember, he's got a house that took over a decade and a half. He's got 1,000 women. He's got pools. He's got national forest in his backyard. This guy has everything. He has lived life, experienced life through it all. And if there's somebody qualified to know about wisdom, to experience it, and to teach us about wisdom and about life, this is our guy. And so this passage, verse 1 through 15, they're going to seem kind of disjointed, kind of seem a little bit not connected, but this is, us walking along with Solomon, and we got a little notebook, and he says, all right, hey kid, write this down. And so we would write down something he says, and then a couple years later, we go back and we look and we see what we have written down, what he has said, and we're contemplating that and trying to find this big idea throughout it. And here's how he starts out. Verse 1, he says, a good name is better than precious ointment. And this is just a pretty general proverb. He says, listen, people, what they care about, it's not what you smell like. It's not the perfume. It's not the cologne you wear. It's not the name brand. It's not how fit you are. It's not how pretty you are. It's not how fast you can run a mile. It is if you have a good reputation, if you're a jerk or not. That's what he says. It's better. People care more about your character than they care about your presentation. They're more interested in how you interact with other human beings than they are about how you present yourself to other human beings. Now, to give you an example, just think about this. You guys have a role model in your life, either past or present, or in some sense, why are they your role model? Is it because they dress really fancy? Is it because they're really bulky and fit? I'm going to take a gander and say that it's probably because you find their character to be something to be emulated. You find it something to be desired in your own life. You see how they interact with other human beings, and you say, that's a good way to care about yourself. That's a good way to carry yourself and to take care. So I want to try and do that as well. And that's what Solomon says. He says, if you're just working on the exterior and not working on the interior, sooner or later your friends are going to find out and they're going to ditch you. They're not going to want to be friends with you because all you care about is how you smell rather than how you really are. And how about this, the next part, the second half of this verse. And he says, the day of death is better than the day of birth. Anybody got a problem with that? Would you rather go to a funeral or a birthday party? I think that's a pretty simple answer. I'm going to be at the birthday party because there's cake, all right? No offense, but I don't really enjoy funerals because that's a pretty depressing time. It's not fun. I would rather go eat cake and watch somebody open presents than go to a funeral. But Solomon says, the smart guys, the wise people, they go to the funerals. And you guys know who Yogi Berra is? This is great catcher for the Yankees for years. He's got a lot of dumb sayings. And one of them was, always go to other people's funerals, otherwise they'll never go to yours. Oh, okay, thanks, Yogi. That's a wise saying, I guess. But this is wise in a different sense than people just coming to your funeral. This is wise in the sense of, think about this. He says, at the very end, how you die, how you go about this, it's not about what you could do anymore. It's all about what you have done. Now, whenever a child is born, what they do is they read the Dr. Seuss's, oh, the places you'll go, right? Maybe. You might go to these places. We hope you go to those places. But we don't really know. You could turn out rotten. Okay? If you were born the day of your birth, you could turn out rotten. It is all about potential. It's all about what you could do, maybe. But on the day of the death, he says that's already set in stone. It's all done. The name that we just talked about, it is done. That is who you are. That's how people will remember you. And it's not about the places you will go, maybe. It's about the places you have done and all the things that you've already accomplished. It is about fulfillment rather than potential. And he says death, that is the real adventure. Because for the people, for us who know Christ, who know God, death is just the beginning. That is where the real journey begins. That's where we get to go and stand next to the creator of the universe, where the people who don't know God, that death is a terrible thing for them. But he says death is really where it's at. I'd rather go to a funeral than to a birthday party. How about verse 2 now? It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. He says, rather go to a funeral rather than a birthday party. I'm going to go to people where people are mourning actively rather than go to the birthday party. And I'm going to go purposely into the house of sorrow, and it's not, again, I'm not planning on doing that. That doesn't sound like fun to me. The house of mourning does not sound more fun than the festival. I don't really want to go to Short or Cunningham or Ingraham or whatever the funeral home is around here. I'd rather go to Party City. I'd rather go to Walters and go play putt-putt or something. I'd rather go skiing. That sounds like more of a good time than going to the house of mourning. But Solomon says, no, the true wise man, he goes to the house of mourning. He says they lay it to heart. They go to the house of mourning. And here's what he's saying, okay? Here's why he says the mourning is better than the feasting. It's because in the house of mourning, when you go to a funeral, that causes you to look at your own life. Anybody been to a funeral and you realize it's somebody you went to school with and you go, oh, in the next day, I could be there. I could be there in an instant. It makes you really think back about your life. Think about how are you living your life? Where does your eternal stock lie? Where do you go with your life? Because Solomon says this really makes you think, really challenges you to be able to make changes, really challenges you to grow. Now here's the next verse, verse 3. And he's continuing on this. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad. Now, I would prefer to laugh than to cry, okay? Anybody else with me? Laughing is better than crying. And have you heard laughing is the best medicine? Laughter is what you do when you're already broken, all right? If you're broken, you're hurting, you laugh and you make you feel better, right? Have you experienced this? But sorrow, that's not just to make you feel better. That's where true growing happens. That's where you're not just stuck in the same place. You're not mending back to where you were. You're going beyond where you were before. Sorrow is where you truly grow in your character. It's where you look at your life, you figure out what needs to be fixed, and you fix it. Because whenever we're going through sorrow, pain, troubles, nastiness, things we don't like to go into, that's whenever you really have to go, well, I need to make a change so that I can get out of this situation. I need to do something in my life to make it past this. And he says that is where true growing happens. It's not from laughter. Laughter is good. It helps. It's a medicine. But it is not what grows a person. It is not what makes you go on and go past this. So he says, and the next couple verses says, it explains what the wise man does and what the foolish man does in these times, in the time of sorrow, pain, frustration. Here's it is, verse 4. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of the fools is in the house of mirth. Now, we just looked at why the house of the wise, or why the wise man goes to the house of mourning. How about the foolish man? He goes to the house of mirth. He goes to entertainment. He goes to the alcohol, the drugs. He goes to the television. He goes to the video games. He goes to the family, to the friends, the people who distract him from life's problems. Because he's not going there to worship God in that sense. He's going there to forget about the trouble in his life. He's going there to numb the pain of the reality of what's going on. He goes there whenever he's going through a tough time and he wants to escape from it. And so he just goes and numbs the pain with whatever he can. Now, give this example. Anybody been to the doctor before? And the doctor says, all right, I'm going to put you in a cast, or I'm going to do surgery on you, or I'm going to give you this medicine which will change something. But whenever a doctor says, well, I'm going to go ahead and give you some morphine, and you're going to lay in bed for a while. That's a bad sign. That's when you know things are going downhill. Because if they just start saying, all right, we're going to numb the pain for you, that's when you got to start worrying. That's when you got to start wondering, where are you going to be next? But whenever the doctor goes in and says, all right, I'm going to have to cut you open, take a knife, put it to your skin, make you bleed, do some stuff to you, but this will make you grow. Where the foolish person, they go and they numb the pain. They don't want to deal with the incision. They don't have to deal with that. They go to where they can numb the pain, to the house of mirth. Now here's the next part, verse 6, or verse 5 or 6, which am I on? Verse 5, I'm on verse 5, that's where I'm at, I know what I'm doing. Verse 5, it is better for a man to hear the rebuke of the wise than to hear the song of fools. He says it's better for people to tell you, hey, you're a dope, than to say, ha, 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 good work. Anybody got those friends who will call you out on your bad word? The stuff you've done wrong? I've got a couple good friends where they say, Clayton, you're an idiot. You need to shape up, right? You need those friends. Those friends are better than the ones who say, hey, let's go have a party. Let's go have a good time. Let's go get drunk. Let's go hang out. It'll be fun. It's better to have the friends who call you out on your junk, tell you that you're wrong, and then help you grow from that. Because that's how you know who really does care about you. They care about your character, and they want you to grow, and so they call you out on that stuff. And he says, it is better to be rebuked by a wise man than to hear the song of a fool. Hear them trying to please your ears. Now, verse 6. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fools. This also is vanity. Now, anybody taken some of the thorns and the vines and burned those? What happens to those? They burn up really quick, make a lot of annoying sound, and don't produce much heat, don't produce much light. There's a little bit of light, a little bit of heat, but not enough to cook with, not enough to keep you warm with. It's just enough to entertain your eyes, and then it gets annoying, and it crackles, and that's what he's saying. These foolish people who just sing a song, try to make you happy, try to help you numb your pain, they are annoying and don't produce much true value. They don't have any light, they don't have any warmth, they are just annoying sound. It is the song of fools, it is crackling twigs, and it is meaningless. Vanity is what Solomon calls it. Now here's verse 7. Solomon says this, in the face of temptation and in the face of hard times, pain, frustration, nastiness in life, verse 7, surely oppression drives the wise into madness. Surely drives him into madness, and a bribe corrupts the heart. Now, what he's saying here, that oppression, it can be translated in a couple different ways, but just think of it as the outside forces that cause you to not be happy. It can be translated as weight or as extortion or a couple other words, but it's outside forces outside of your control that cause you pain, frustration, sorrow, all those things. It drives the wise man into madness. And in that time, whenever he is driven into madness, driven into this pain and this sorrow and this nastiness, he will be tempted, you will be tempted to take a bribe, to take a shortcut, to work away, work around, instead of doing what you know to be right, doing what is wrong. And he's giving the example of what they do wrong. And there's three options here. You can do what you know to be right, learn from it, grow from this sorrow, this pain, this frustration. You can do nothing, or you can actively take the shortcut and do what God asks you not to do. And so it's do nothing, do what's right, or do blatantly what is wrong. And 2 out of those 3 are bad. Can I tell you that? Doing nothing is the sin of omission. It's also a sin just as bad as the transgression, the sin of commission, the actively doing that. And he says it corrupts the heart. It changes you. It twists you. And it makes your bent not towards righteousness, but your bent towards evil instead. Now how about verse 8? Better is the end of a thing than its beginning. And the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. He says, listen, the end is better than the beginning. The beginning is nice. I can't tell you how many books I've started to read, got about halfway through, and then got distracted and never finished. But he says, finishing a book, finishing something is better than the beginning. Now, my family, we love to do puzzles during Christmas. Every year we get like a 2,000-piece Ravensburger puzzle. By the way, Ravensburger, it's the best brand. If you're going to buy a puzzle, buy Ravensburger. But 2,000-piece puzzle, we get this big one, we put it on our dining room table, and we work on it. But there's nothing more satisfying than putting that last piece in, finishing it, and seeing the big picture of this puzzle. Now, I can solve a Rubik's Cube. By the way, I've got a couple ones in my office and at home. But can I tell you, the very first time I picked up a Rubik's Cube, it was frustrating as all get out. I could get one side on a good day, okay? I could get one side if I was lucky. But then it took me months and months and practicing and cheating and looking up the code or whatever you want to call it, the algorithms online. But as soon as I solved that Rubik's Cube, the end, it was way better than the beginning. The satisfaction, the completion, and the happiness that comes from that is way better than the beginning. And Solomon says, the end. Keep your mind, keep your focus on the end goal during that pain, sorrow, frustration. And he says, during that time, while you're focusing on the end, better is the end, and patient is the spirit. Patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. The one who patiently awaits and anticipates the end is better than the one who says, oh, I know how it's going to end. Oh, I know what's going on. Did you guys see the video? I think it was just past year. One of the baseball games they had, one of minor league game, they had 2 people race. And one guy in a dumb suit, and then one guy picked out of the crowd. They're just running across the baseball field, and the guy gets a huge head start. He gets all the way halfway across, and he starts showboating, bragging about it, and getting the crowd into it. And then this dude in the dumb suit just comes flying up past him, and the guy who was showboating falls on his face and scrapes up his face. He was more prideful than he was patient. He says, it is better to be patient and wait it out to the very end rather than to think you know what's going to happen before it happens. He says, you have patience and you'll see how the end is better than the beginning. And so up to this point, Solomon, he's been giving us general life truth, general knowledge about life, understanding what is happening in life. And now he's going to shift from, hey, here's what I observed about life, and now he's going to shift to, here's what you need to do. Here are some things that you can actively do. So here's the next one. Verse 9. Be not quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger lodges in the heart of fools. He says, if you are prideful, if you are not looking at the end and just showboating and not worrying about the end goal, you are going to get angry. You're going to get upset. You're going to get frustrated. And you're going to get ticked off at life because life isn't going the way you want it to. And he says, anger lodges in the heart of fools. Now how about this next one? The next one, verse 10. Say not. Do you hear what he says? Say not. Do not say. You catch that? This is something you are not supposed to say. We are on the same page. This example he's getting ready to give, don't do this. And what does he say? Where were the former days better than these? What happened to the good old days? Man, I wish I lived back in the 50s. It'd be great. Back in the 50s and 60s, Andy Griffith show, black and white, Mayberry. Oh, it'd be a better time. You know what the good old days stems from? A bad memory and an active imagination. It's not true. Those days, back in the 50s, they were just as bad as they were today. Maybe in a different way, but they were just as bad. There were still wars, there was still corruption, there was still junk. It may have been a little better hidden, but it's still just as bad. Okay? The good old days are just as bad as today. So when you say, oh, I miss the good old days, here's what Solomon says. Verse 10. It is not from wisdom that you ask this. That's a dumb question. That's what Solomon says. He says, if you're longing for the good old days, you're stupid. Can I just say, I struggle with that because I got a little bit of a nostalgia streak. Whenever I was in high school, I didn't really like high school that much. I mean, it was fine. I got through. It was whatever. But then I was looking back, like, oh, man, those good old days. I love those times. I'm thinking, that's not really how it was, though. I suffer from this just as much as you guys do, okay? The old guys who go back in '87, we won the state championship. Those good times. I think that was Mount Carmel's state football team. I don't really know. But the good old days. He says, that is not from wisdom that you ask us. That is a dumb, foolish thing to say. That's Solomon, not me. Get mad at God, not me, okay? So, how about this? Verse 11 now. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, an advantage to those who see the sun. He says, whenever you receive an inheritance, whenever you have money in your life, you better spend it with wisdom. You better have wisdom whenever you're dealing with that money. Otherwise, all that money is going to be gone really quick, and you're not going to have any more money left. So when you get some money into your hands, use wisdom when you deal with that. And now the next verse, going off of this inheritance, this money. For the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money. And the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. Now, anybody have money, right? Everybody nod your head, we got money. How many of you have a bank account? Yeah, we got a bank account. He says, you need to protect your wisdom in the same way or better than the way you protect your money. How much time and effort you put into saving your money, protecting your money, making sure you have money for tomorrow, you need to put more effort, more energy into saving your wisdom. Because money, it helps a little bit right now, but wisdom, look at that. Wisdom and knowledge are kind of interchangeable in this verse. Wisdom is good with an inheritance. The advantage of knowledge, the advantage of wisdom, is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. Wise people live longer. My dad always asked me, what's the difference between being smart and being a smart owl? Well, one's funny and one lives longer. I'm the one that's funny, I hope. He says, the wise person it's gonna prolong their life. It's gonna make it better for them because they can use what they have in life more. Now, how about this next one? Verse 13. Consider the work of God. Look to what God does. Who can make straight what he has made crooked? This is the second time that Solomon has used that same thing. It is talked back in chapter 1. But what this is saying is, if God has made something, has dictated something, and has done something in your life, even the sorrow, the pain, the frustration, the nastiness, you cannot change it. If he has made it crooked, it's going to be crooked. If he wants to make it straight, he will make it straight. And if you're lucky, you might get to be involved in making it straight. But if you, on your own, are trying to change what God has done, it is not going to work. And give an example. Paul, the great apostle who wrote half our Bible in the New Testament, he writes 3 times, I have a thorn in my flesh. God, take away this thorn in my flesh. We don't know what it was. We don't know if it was a literal thorn or a sword. Or we don't know if it was an annoying somebody who just kept following him. We don't know if it was a sin in his life. We don't know what it was. But we know it was sorrowful, painful for him. And he says, God, take this away from me. You know what God says? No, I've dictated that thorn, so it's going to stay there. Sometimes the junk in your life, not all the time, don't hear me wrong, some of the time, the nastiness, the pain in your life is because God sent it to you, and he wants you to use that sorrow and that mourning to grow from it. He wants you to take that time and grow from that. Not to numb it, not to cast it away, but to take that and grow from it. That is why Solomon back and he said, in life, the funeral is better than the birthday party because you can grow more. He says, sometimes God sends this in your life so that you can grow. Here's verse 14. In the day of prosperity, be joyful. And in the day of adversity, consider. God has made the one as well as the other, so that man may not find out anything that will be after him. He says, here's what you need to do. Ultimately, in everything in your life, when things are going great, worship God. And when things are not going great, ask God how you can grow. Understand that God may have sent that in the same way that he sent the pain and the sorrow, in the same way he sent the joy and the prosperity. He says both of them are given by God, are gifts from God even, signs of his love, so that you can grow and be better in life. So this is our sage, Solomon, this old, gray, wise guy who comes along, takes us under his wing, and he passes on his wisdom in life. And he says, all right, listen up, get out a notebook, write this stuff down, and what we see throughout this is that we learn about life and we learn how to glorify God in that life by taking this pain and this sorrow and this suffering and saying, God, how can I grow from that? Now, for what you guys can do in this passage, by the way, you guys can come up and play. You're already up here. Sing loud.
Please.
Okay. And what he's going to say, throughout this, you can pick out some of these things and say, I need to work on that. I need that. I need to, instead of numbing my pain, I need to look at the pain of my life and see how I can grow from that. Instead of surrounding myself with friends who numb the pain, I need to surround myself with friends who can rebuke me and tell me what's going on in my life. You can go through and pick any number of things from this passage and apply that. Here's what I want us to do, all right? Here's what I think you guys can actively do this week is if you are that old wise guy, find some young buck and teach them the wisdom you've gained in life. And if you are a young buck, find an old wise guy who can teach you the wisdom that they've given you in life. This is what Solomon says. He takes him under the wing. He says, I'm a sage. Now I'm going to try and teach you about my life. And now it's our turn to keep doing that and practicing this wisdom that he gives us. The purpose of Solomon becoming the sage is so that he can teach you about life and teach you how to glorify God in that life, and so that we can carry that on. We can keep learning about life and keep glorifying God in life and then pass on his wisdom so more people can glorify God. Let's worship him now.